I still remember the look in Walter's eyes. He was 76, proud man, military background, one of those types who'd rather walk through pain than talk about it. But that day, something had changed. He came into my office, sat down slow, and after a few seconds of silence, he said, "Doc, I think my legs are betraying me." He chuckled a little, trying to make light of it, but I could hear it. That quiet tension under the surface, the kind you hear when someone's unsure if they're imagining things or if something real is happening to their body. I asked what was going on. "It's strange," he said. "I was tying my shoe this morning, and when I stood up, my knees felt like jelly. Not pain, not dizziness, just this weakness, like they didn't want to hold me." He said it passed within a minute, but it left a mark, not on his legs, on his confidence. "It's probably just age," he added, like a man trying to excuse a friend who showed up late. "I mean, I'm not 40 anymore." We both smiled. But I've learned over the years, when someone says it's probably just age, they don't really believe it. They're hoping it is, because that's easier than the unknown. So I asked him to walk for me. I watched how he stood, how he moved. No major limp, no trauma, no red flags in his gait, but there was a faint hesitation, just for a second, when he turned, as if his legs were checking in with his brain, asking, "Are you sure we can do this?" We ran a few standard tests, strength, reflexes, vitals, nothing glaring, and then, just to gather context, I asked, "What did you have for breakfast today?" He looked up. "Oh, my usual. I eat clean, Doc. Big fruit bowl. I had a banana, some grapes, a slice of papaya, no junk." He sounded proud, and rightly so. Most seniors struggle to build good food habits. But for some reason, that bowl caught my attention. Banana, grapes, papaya. I've heard that lineup before. I didn't say much at that moment, just nodded and took note. But internally, I began asking myself a quiet question I've learned to pay attention to. What if the very thing we call healthy sometimes plays by different rules once we age? I didn't have the answer yet, but something about his story, about that moment where his knees almost gave in without warning, it lingered. And as I watched him walk back to the door, steady but unsure, I knew we'd have to look deeper, because what Walter was describing, that fleeting, almost invisible leg weakness, it wasn't just happening in a vacuum. There was something contributing to it, nudging it forward quietly. And in my experience, it's not always the usual suspects like arthritis or nerve damage. Sometimes it's what's on the plate, especially the foods we trust the most, especially the ones we never think twice about. Over the next few weeks, Walter kept coming in. Not in crisis, not even in pain, just confused. He'd have good days, and then out of nowhere, he'd feel that wobble again. Never dramatic, never long-lasting, but it was enough to make him sit down a little faster, reach for the handrail just in case. He wasn't a man who liked second-guessing his own body, so he started second-guessing everything else. "Maybe it's my shoes," he said, "or the chair I use in the living room. Could be my mattress. Haven't changed it in a while." He even laughed once and said, "Doc, maybe the floor is tilted." That's the part that gets me. When someone knows something's wrong, they can feel it in their bones, but they keep trying to explain it away. Not because they're in denial, but because they don't want to believe their body's doing this just because it's getting older. But the more we talked, the more I noticed something else that stayed constant in Walter's life: his food routine. He wasn't eating processed junk. He wasn't skipping meals. In fact, he prided himself on his discipline. Every morning, he'd prepare the same bowl of fruit: bananas, grapes, a little papaya if it was ripe. Around lunch, he'd usually snack on mango, just a few slices, but often on its own. And after dinner, he'd sometimes end the day with watermelon. Said it helped him stay hydrated through the night. To the average person, that sounds like someone doing everything right. But to me, it started forming a picture. See, these weren't just fruits. They were all high in natural sugar, and some, like bananas and papaya, high in potassium too. For most healthy young people, that's not a problem. But in someone older, especially someone taking medications for blood pressure or circulation, that mix of sugar and minerals, especially taken alone, can gradually wear on the system. Not in dramatic ways, but in tiny, barely noticeable ways, until one day your legs say, "We can't keep up." I didn't rush to warn him just yet. I've learned that when someone's proud of their habits, you don't tear them down. You walk with them. You ask better questions. So I asked, "Do you ever pair that fruit with protein? Maybe some eggs or nuts?" He blinked. "No, just the fruit. Isn't that the cleanest way?" And that right there, that belief, is something I've seen lead a lot of well-meaning seniors down the wrong road. Because what we think is clean sometimes isn't balanced. And when it comes to leg strength, stability, and overall muscle control, balance matters more than people realize. Walter kept eating his fruit bowl, day after day. It gave him comfort. It made him feel like he was doing something good for his body. But his legs were telling a different story, one that was slowly becoming harder to ignore. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the healthy things, but something still doesn't feel right, give this video a like. You're not alone, and it helps more people find these important stories. Walter didn't bring it up, but I could tell something had changed when he walked in a week later. He was quiet, still polite, still smiling, but there was a heaviness to him, and it wasn't just physical. He sat down and said, "My daughter's starting to notice things now." Angela, that was her name. Early 40s, smart, attentive, the kind of daughter who doesn't miss much. She'd come by to help him with a light bulb in the hallway. Watched him climb 2 steps, then pause at the 3rd. He hadn't stumbled, hadn't fallen, but she saw it, that little shake in his knee, the way he placed his hand on the wall like it was second nature. She didn't say anything right away, just offered to carry the groceries in. But later that night, she called him and said, "Dad, do your legs feel different lately?" He tried to brush it off, said he was just tired, but that question stayed with him. The next morning, when his legs wobbled again after bending down to pick up the paper, he knew he had to say something. That's why he came back to see me. Now that someone else had seen it, it was real. We did a deeper workup. Muscle tone, balance checks, circulation, everything looked passable. Some slight muscle loss, but nothing outside what we'd expect for a man his age. Still, something wasn't sitting right with me. So we ran blood work, electrolytes, kidney function, blood sugar. I wasn't expecting major surprises, but I wanted a full picture. A few days later, the labs came in. Most of it was within range, but one number caught my attention. His potassium was high, not dangerously so, but elevated, especially for someone not on supplements. I called him in. When he sat down, I said, "Walter, I want to ask something simple. Do you eat bananas regularly?" He smiled. "Every day, sometimes twice." I nodded. "What about oranges?" He laughed. "I squeeze one fresh every morning." I looked at him gently and said, "We might need to talk about that fruit bowl." It wasn't an accusation, and I made sure he knew that. This wasn't about cutting fruit. It was about understanding what's right for his body now. Bananas, oranges, papaya, all delicious, all healthy. But for seniors on certain medications or with slower kidney processing, that amount of potassium can gradually cause more harm than good, especially when those fruits are eaten by themselves. Add to that the sugar load in mangoes, grapes, watermelon, especially without protein or fiber to slow things down, and the body begins to struggle in subtle ways. One of the first places it shows up? The legs. The muscles feel heavy, Coordination drops a little. The smallest imbalance becomes noticeable. Walter listened carefully. He wasn't defensive. He just looked surprised. He said, "But I thought I was doing everything right. Fruit's good for you. That's what we've always been told." And that's when I said something I've had to say far too often. Fruit is good, but your body isn't working like it did when you were 30. It needs different support now. Same foods, just smarter timing, better combinations. He nodded slowly. I wish someone had told me this sooner. And maybe that's you too. Watching this and realizing no one ever mentioned how fruit can interact with age, meds, or muscle function. If that's the case, tap the notification bell. I share these stories because far too many seniors are left figuring this out on their own. I could tell something had shifted in Walter that day. Not his blood work, not his posture, his mindset. And that, more than anything, is what opens the door to real change. Walter's story wasn't the first time I'd seen this, and it wouldn't be the last. Once you start recognizing the pattern, you begin noticing it in more and more people. The slow, subtle decline in leg strength, the strange fatigue that doesn't match blood tests, the falls that shouldn't have happened. I thought about Linda, 68, a retired teacher, sharp mind, healthy weight, always smiling. She came in last year complaining of her knees giving out after grocery shopping. Nothing painful, just this feeling like her legs wanted to stop before she did. She was convinced it was circulation, maybe a pinched nerve, but after scans and movement tests, nothing serious turned up. We went through her habits, and wouldn't you know, she started every day with a tall glass of fresh squeezed orange juice and a banana, ate grapes mid-morning, sometimes had a few dates after lunch for sweetness, and like Walter, watermelon before bed. That's 5 high-sugar, high-potassium fruits every single day. Again, none of them dangerous on their own, but layered, taken without protein, over time, especially with aging kidneys and a slower metabolism, that's when things begin to build. Then there was Yusuf, 72, ex-banker, quiet man, came in after his wife noticed he was holding onto walls while walking through the house. Not dizzy, just unsure on his feet. He swore he was eating clean, and he was, depending on how you define clean. His go-to lunch was a mango smoothie. Just mangoes, ice, a splash of honey. Sometimes he'd throw in a few dates for fiber. He was drinking it thinking it was light and healthy, but for someone on blood pressure meds with a family history of insulin resistance, that smoothie was more like a sugar spike cocktail. It was never about blame. I told them what I told Walter. It's not that these fruits are bad, it's that they're easy to overdo and very hard to notice when they're causing trouble. Because they wear a disguise, a healthy one. No one questions fruit. But think about it. Bananas, papaya, and oranges all bring in high potassium. Grapes, mangoes, and dates deliver a rush of sugar to the bloodstream. Watermelon? Mostly water, yes, but it's often eaten late at night when digestion slows and blood pressure meds are still active. For a younger body, that might not matter much, but for seniors, especially those managing medications, blood sugar, or electrolyte balance, that kind of daily fruit load can nudge the system out of alignment. And where does it show up first? The legs, because your legs are demanding muscles. They carry your weight, stabilize your body, balance your posture. When energy delivery is unsteady or when muscles lack the right support, they're often the first to struggle. Not fail, just weaken, quietly. And by the time someone notices, it's usually after a small scare, a missed step, a sudden sit-down, a second of trembling that makes them freeze. Like Walter, like Linda, like Yusuf, and maybe like you or someone you care about. If you're starting to question your own daily habits, not out of fear, but out of curiosity, consider leaving a comment below. Sometimes a simple "that's me" helps another senior realize they're not alone. Because the truth is, we're not taught how our bodies change with age. We're told to eat fruit, stay active, take our meds, and we try. But without context, even the best habits can start to backfire. It was becoming clear to me that Walter didn't just need a diet change. He needed a new relationship with the food he already trusted. There's something I've come to understand over the years, and I wish more people knew it. The way your body processes food at 70 is not the same as it did at 30. Not worse, just different. And the sooner we accept that, the easier it becomes to support the body we have, not the one we used to have. When I sat with Walter again, I walked him through what I'm about to share with you, not as a lecture, but as a friend who sees this every week. Here's the truth. As we age, muscles naturally lose density and strength, a process called sarcopenia. It starts slow, sometimes as early as your 50s, and it speeds up if your muscles aren't getting the nutrients and stability they need. That includes steady energy, balanced minerals, and support from foods that help your blood sugar and your electrolytes remain in check. Now, let's go back to fruit. Many fruits, especially bananas, oranges, watermelon, mangoes, and grapes, contain high amounts of natural sugar. They also carry potassium, fructose, and sometimes acid, all of which are fine in moderation. But when your body's slowing digestion or your kidneys aren't filtering quite as efficiently, they can start to pile up. This is especially true if you're taking blood pressure medications, diuretics, ACE inhibitors, calcium channel blockers, or medications that affect blood sugar like metformin. These drugs all interact with how your body processes potassium, fluid, and glucose. So what looks like a harmless mango smoothie or a bowl of grapes on an empty stomach can turn into a quiet energy crash, or worse, a subtle imbalance that weakens the very muscles you rely on to stay upright. And your legs? They're your most honest muscles. They tell the truth when energy is unstable, when sugar spikes, when potassium builds just a little too much. And they don't give you dramatic warnings, just trembles, wobbles, a hand reaching for support where it didn't used to. Walter's legs were doing that, not because of disease, but because of imbalance. And it wasn't just what he was eating, it was how. He was eating fruit first thing in the morning with nothing else to slow the sugar down. No protein, no fiber, no fat. Then again at lunch, a fruit-only snack. Then at night, watermelon after dinner, sometimes followed by orange slices before bed. Each one seemed innocent, but when we looked at the full pattern, it told a different story. This is why I often say, the problem isn't the fruit, it's the routine. For seniors, timing and pairing matter more than ever. Here's how I explained it to Walter. Imagine your body's like a table. When you were younger, it had 4 solid legs. It could balance anything you threw on it. Now, the legs aren't broken, they're just a little thinner. So if you put something too heavy on one side, like a fruit that spikes sugar or potassium, the table wobbles. Not because the fruit is bad, but because it's landing unevenly. He sat quiet for a moment. Then he said, "So, I don't need to stop eating fruit?" I shook my head. No, you just need to change how you eat it. And maybe that's a relief to hear, that you don't have to throw away your bananas or your oranges. If that brought a little peace of mind, go ahead and like this video. It tells the platform these kinds of real-life stories matter. We were starting to see things clearly now. The fruit wasn't the enemy. It just needed a better partner on the plate. Once Walter understood the why, he was ready for the how. That's the part I always enjoy most, when a patient goes from uncertainty to curiosity. When they stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What can I try differently?" We started small. The first thing I asked him to do was stop eating fruit on an empty stomach. Give your body something to work with, I told him. A slice of whole grain toast with peanut butter, a hard-boiled egg. even a handful of almonds. Then bring in the fruit. He agreed, said it didn't feel like a punishment, just a reshuffling. Then we trimmed his fruit frequency. Bananas? Once or twice a week now, always with something savory. Oranges? We cut the fresh squeezed juice, too concentrated. Instead, he enjoyed a couple of orange slices alongside lunch. Watermelon? Only midday, never before bed, and always in a small bowl, not straight from the fridge. As for mangoes and dates, we saved those for weekends. A treat, not a staple. I reminded him, just because it grows on a tree doesn't mean it can't tire your legs if you're not careful. We didn't remove fruit, we just repositioned it. Angela got involved too. She helped prep his new breakfast. Scrambled eggs, whole oats, sometimes a small bowl of blueberries or half a banana. No more fruit-only meals. No more late-night fruit bowls. No more silent sugar crashes pretending to be just tired legs. And something beautiful started to happen. At his 2-week check-in, I asked how he was feeling. He didn't answer right away, just stood up from the chair in my office. Smooth, no hesitation, no armrest. He grinned. "Did you see that?" I nodded. I did. His legs weren't fully rebuilt, not yet, but they were awake again, supported. He said he'd noticed it that past Sunday, getting out of the car after church. Normally, he'd brace himself before stepping out, but this time, he didn't think about it. I just stood, and it felt normal. Those are the moments that matter, not miracle recoveries, just ordinary movements becoming easy again. That's what balance does. And the truth is, Walter hadn't made radical changes. He didn't join a gym. He didn't start a complex diet. He just stopped isolating fruit. He gave his muscles what they needed to process it better, slower, smarter. And his legs responded. If that gives you even a sliver of hope that you might feel steadier again with just a few gentle changes, I hope you'll share this with someone you care about. You never know who's blaming their age when it might just be their breakfast. Walter didn't feel like a different man. He felt like himself again. And that, to me, is more powerful than any prescription. After Walter's progress, the next step was making his new habits stick, not just for a few weeks, but for life. Because the goal isn't fear, it's freedom. Freedom to enjoy your favorite foods without unknowingly draining your energy or weakening your legs. That means understanding how fruit fits into your body's rhythm now, not 20 years ago. Here's what I told Walter, and what I've told dozens of others who sat where he sat, wondering why their muscles didn't feel as strong even though their diet looked healthy. Number 1, never eat fruit by itself first thing in the morning. Your body wakes up with low blood sugar. Adding fast-acting fruit sugars without fiber, fat, or protein is like lighting a match in a dry forest. It burns fast and leaves you more drained than before. Instead, start your day with something grounding: eggs, oatmeal, nut butter on toast. Then add a small serving of fruit. Even just shifting fruit to second on the plate makes a world of difference. Number 2, be mindful of fruit that concentrates sugar. This includes mangoes, grapes, dates, and even dried fruits. They're small, but they pack a punch. Think of them more like desserts than staples. Walter now enjoys mango slices once a week, paired with a protein-heavy meal. That keeps his sugar curve gentle. No crashes, no leg fatigue an hour later. Number 3, watch when you eat watermelon. It's hydrating, yes, but it's also very high in sugar for something so light, and it digests quickly. If eaten late at night, especially alongside blood pressure medications or diuretics, it can make you feel weak or restless in the morning. That's why I tell patients, enjoy watermelon at lunch, not after dinner, and not straight from the fridge. The cold temperature can interfere with digestion for some seniors. Number 4, rethink fruit juice. Even if it's fresh squeezed, fruit juice strips away the fiber and delivers sugar fast, faster than your system may be ready for. Walter gave up orange juice entirely and never missed it. He said, "I'd rather chew it anyway." Now he has 2 slices with lunch and feels steadier all afternoon. Number 5, pair fruits with purpose. If you're having a banana, eat it with peanut butter or alongside a boiled egg. If you're eating papaya, have it with some yogurt or a sprinkle of seeds. Even a small handful of almonds alongside grapes slows the impact on your system. The goal is to turn fruit from a solo act into a duet. Because when you pair it with something stabilizing, your body responds more calmly. Your legs stay supported. Your energy feels steady. Walter kept a small note on his fridge that said, "Don't eat naked fruit." We both laughed at the phrase, but it worked. It reminded him to dress his fruit up, give it company on the plate. That little change gave him the energy to walk longer, stand stronger, and feel more in control of his day. If any of these habits feel doable, if you found yourself nodding along, I invite you to subscribe. I share stories like Walter's, not just to inform, but to remind you your body still wants to work with you. Fruit isn't the villain. It just needs the right timing, the right partners, and a little more attention than it used to. And once you learn that, you don't lose the fruit. You just gain your legs back. It's been months now since I last saw Walter in the clinic. He still checks in now and then, sometimes by phone, sometimes a short visit. But these days, it's never about his legs. Last time we spoke, he said, "Doc, I walk better now at 76 than I did at 70. And I didn't have to start running marathons to get here." I smiled. "What changed the most for you?" He didn't hesitate. "Breakfast," he said, and believing that I could still feel strong again. That answer stuck with me. Because it wasn't about bananas or papayas or the bowl of grapes. It was about taking back a sense of control over his body, his meals, his mornings. We like to think that strength comes from exercise or supplements or pushing harder. But sometimes strength comes from something smaller. From realizing the things you trusted, like that beautiful fruit bowl you prepared each day, may need to evolve, just like you have. I think of Walter often when I pass the produce aisle now. When I see a perfectly ripe mango or a bright bunch of grapes, I don't think danger. I think balance. I think context. These foods aren't harmful. They just stopped being effortless. And that's okay. That's part of aging well, noticing what your body quietly tells you and actually listening. Walter's story isn't unique. That's the part I wish more people knew. There are thousands of seniors out there right now, just like him, feeling unstable, a little unsure, maybe even a bit ashamed, and blaming it all on getting old. But sometimes it's the routine, the timing, the fruit bowl. And once you see it, you can change it. No crash diets, no fear, just quiet adjustments. A hard-boiled egg here, a smaller slice of melon there, a banana, maybe not every day, but once or twice a week with something hearty beside it. And slowly, your legs begin to believe in you again. If this story made something click for you, even just a little, I hope you'll share it. Someone out there is wobbling quietly, blaming their knees, blaming the floor, when it might just be their breakfast, waiting to be rearranged. Walter took back his legs one meal at a time. And if he could, so can you. Thanks for being here. Until next time.